Hi, my name is Mary Spender and you are watching Tuesday Talks. And in this week's episode, I'm going to chime in on the $2.8 million lawsuit that has taken the internet and music industry by storm. You may have seen by now in the numerous articles and YouTube videos that at the end of last month, a jury decided that Dark Horse by Katy Perry, which was released in 2013, ripped off 2008 Christian rap track Joyful Noise by an artist called Flame. I am openly jumping on this bandwagon that Rick Beato and Adam Neely have already argued in a far more succinct manner than I can provide, and I couldn't agree more with them. But as a professional singer-songwriter with a music degree and interest in musicology, I am finding this all rather nerve-wracking, as should other songwriters. The more I research the court case, the more I'm frustrated, and although I have no legal background, I'm basically an armchair detective, I want to join the conversation. P.S. If I ever get sued, I am definitely having Rick Beato and Adam Neely on my defense team. This level of attention isn't new to Katy Perry, but I do understand that this is her first plagiarism lawsuit that went to a jury. $20 million was the original amount sought by the attorneys for Flame and the two co-writers of Joyful Noise. And even though their whole argument is based around the instrumental part of the song, they held all 6 songwriters accountable. Supposedly, Katy Perry and Sarah Hudson wrote the lyrics, Juicy J wrote his rap verse, and the rest of the song was produced or conjured by Dr. Luke, Max Martin, and Circuit. I chose the word conjured because I particularly find a problem in the legal documents, with Flame saying that Perry's Dark Horse had tainted the sanctity of his own track, and his Christian gospel artist reputation had been harmed by the anti-Christian witchcraft, paganism, black magic, and Illuminati imagery evoked by Dark Horse, especially in the music video. Okay, she mentions Aphrodite once in the lyrics, the Greek goddess of love, but what goes on in the music video with all the Egyptian imagery shouldn't have an effect here on this case, because the rest of the lyrics are common pop song themes of desire, allure, lust, and chemistry, just dramatized. The imagery and the lyrics are not the problem here. Who exactly told him that his reputation was damaged? These sweeping statements surely aren't relevant without any evidence, and what is his reputation going to be like now when the lawsuit changes the game for all musicians? The jury decided quite quickly that Perry and her co-writers were all to be given penalties, although Capitol Records took the brunt of it with $1.2 million. Katy Perry, $550,000, Max Martin, $250,000, and I guess the rest was divided between them. And although $2.8 million seems like a large sum, and the less sympathetic of us, and maybe the not so rich, could brush this off and say, well, they can afford it. But what precedent does this set for future lawsuits for artists and songwriters that aren't at this level? Okay, musical examples. I'm going to keep it simple here. As you can see, when the beats or the rhythms of both tracks are actually written down, they are completely different. Firstly, enjoy these terrible sounds, but here is Flame's song at 154 beats per minute. Now with the click. Next, we have Katy Perry's song at 132 beats per minute. Again, now here it is with click. Now here, I've slowed both down to 132 beats per minute, just to show you how messy it would be if they were put on top of each other. The two riffs at first glance don't sound too dissimilar, but again, when written out, they're actually a little bit different, and it's not an original phrase anyway, so Flame can't own it. Here is a horrible synth violin sound just for your entertainment. Then, in terms of beats per minute, Joyful Noise is faster than Dark Horse. They are in different keys. Context and style should not be the battle here. So technically that should be the end of it, because neither the beat or the riff are the same. However, I feel like they're clutching at straws here. Flame's attorneys said that because the relevant riff plays through 45% of Dark Horse, the plaintiffs should get 45% of its earnings. However, I don't want to be pedantic, but the riff features in 50 out of 119 bars in its full extent, without any changes, which actually makes up 42%. So surely that should have been in the paperwork. However, obviously 45% was not gifted to Flame's team, but the jury then decided that the instrumental riff the two sides were fighting over was responsible for 22.5% of the song's success. And that's how they handed out the financial reward. How is that determined? Did they put together some kind of focus group that helped them find that percentage? Surely the reason is that it was sung by one of this century's most popular artists, and had a huge marketing campaign behind it too. Christine LePera, Perry's attorney, said that the only thing in common, obviously between Dark Horse and Joyful Noise, is unprotectable expression, evenly spaced C and B notes repeated. They're trying to own basic building blocks of music, the alphabet of music that should be available to everyone. Okay, we'll come back to this song in a second. Let's now talk about Katy Perry's history with songwriting claims. I remember the internet going wild over how similar Katy Perry's Raw sounded to Sarah Bareilles' Brave. Raw was released in August 2013, Brave had been released in April 2013. With a famous tweet that showed Katy Perry had most definitely listened to the song on its release, Sarah Bareilles brushed it off and was pleased with the press and extra sales that came along with the Billboard, LA Times, and Huffington Post articles that accused Katy Perry of copying. Bareilles said that she and Katy Perry were good friends and that they spoke when the comparisons were made, and she didn't feel like anything was taken from her artistically. More recently, as I'll admit, I'm a fan of Katy Perry and I actually like her music. I was even thinking of doing a cover of Never Really Over, her latest song. However, I got slightly distracted and at first disillusioned when I found out the song had 9 songwriters. I know that having 9 songwriters on a massive pop hit isn't all that uncommon, but this one got interesting. Not all the names credited were present in the room when the song came to fruition. Instead, Katy Perry's team approached a Norwegian artist called Dagny, who released the 2017 song Love You Like That, saying that they'd written their own version of the song and they wanted to give credit where credit was due. So with her most recent release, Katy Perry and her team were open and honest with the fact that they were influenced by Dagny's song, and I guess it could now be seen as a move to protect her summer hit from facing any more backlash. But in this case, Katy Perry and Dr. Luke testified under oath that they hadn't heard the song by Flame until they were actually accused and it was brought to their attention. Flame's lawyers, however, successfully argued against this because it received a Grammy Award nomination. That led on to them accusing Perry's producers of taking the beat without their permission. One thing I do need to add is that the lawsuit between Flame and Katy Perry has actually been going on since 2014, so that's 5 years. And again, when you think about that $2.8 million sum and you factor in the legal fees on both sides, well, so bear with me here, because the issue I'm most worried about is the difference between influence and plagiarism when it comes to songwriting. Influence is the capacity to have an effect on the development of something. Plagiarism is the process of actually using another person's idea or work and passing it off as your own. I was particularly paranoid when I was at university and writing essays, and that was just for an undergraduate degree. Plagiarism was the worst thing you could be accused of, and it was terrifying. You had to read around the subject and make sure your argument credited the scholars who put the evidence in place for you to form your own opinion. But you don't have to do that for pop music, because influences are encouraged. Dagny, who I mentioned earlier in her BBC News interview, when confronted about Katy Perry, said it's not uncommon for her to listen to a bit of Katy Perry for inspiration before she starts writing or recording songs. Because we are all influenced and inspired by other musicians. That's just how it works. So here's a new word I learned that is making me even more paranoid and wishing that I'd never listened to any form of music just in case I suffer from cryptomnesia, which is the term for unintentional plagiarism when a writer innocently fails to acknowledge an earlier source due to the failure to recognise his or her own thoughts and words as unoriginal. Anyway, this leads me on to Todd Decker, the cited musicologist and professor at Washington University in St. Louis, who went under oath on the side of Flame's Joyful Noise, who must surely be aware that his argument wouldn't even stand up in an undergraduate essay. In court, he declared that Dark Horse had borrowed the underlying beat of Joyful Noise after listening, humming, singing along to, and playing both songs at the piano. Decker also claimed that ostinatos or repeating sequences of musical figures within a song shared 5 or 6 points of similarity. He basically listed the building blocks of what makes a song a song. The timbre, the pitch, the rhythm, texture, pattern of repetition, and melodic shape. So let's go through each of these. The tone, or the timbre, or vibe of a song can't, or at least shouldn't, be able to be copyrighted. That's too all-encompassing and general for a legal case. Next, the pitch. Okay, they are a similar sounding register, but they are different notes after all. Then again, the bass drum rhythm isn't the same, so that can't count. You can't count the beat or the rhythm. Then the texture, which includes the tempo, melody, and harmony, and combines all of them to create a composition. But again, there are just too many variables. You can't copyright a texture. The tempo is different, the main melody isn't shared, and the chords are different. The harmony is different. Then pattern repetition. They're pop songs. They're meant to have hooks, which are often repeated. That's why they're so hooky. That's why they're so catchy. And finally, the melodic shape. Just not the same shape. On the other side, Lawrence Ferreira, musicologist and a professor at New York University, argued that Dark Horse and Joyful Noise shared similar instrumental sequences to older songs like Jolly Old St. Nicholas and Merrily We Roll Along. And now we are aware of other examples thanks to all the discussion online. This should be a sign of hope for these copyright law arguments. Surely if you can prove the song was actually based on something else that predates Flame's track, the case should just fall apart. Forensic musicologist and Berkeley professor Joe Bennett was quoted in The Guardian in 2017 that when he consults on alleged plagiarism, he'll often go back and see if the first songwriter used a melody that already existed, something out of copyright, like a Mozart tune. Because simply, if the melody pre-existed, then any later identical melody would by definition not be original. Okay, so even older than Mozart, there is the J.S. Bach example that Adam used. Ultimately, Flame is not original here, so case closed. The armchair detectives win again. With so many different opinions cropping up from experts all over the world, this one was not as clear-cut as the Sam Smith versus Tom Petty lawsuit. And I'm really hoping this case goes to appeal and wins. Because if it doesn't, ultimately, this is worrying for all songwriters. It kind of makes everyone vulnerable. So, a tip. Document every aspect of your songwriting. Record all your sessions. If you are in the room with another co-writer, make sure all your splits are confirmed before even writing a note. But don't let this scare you and make you overanalyze every single composition. I'm also praying for anti-plagiarism songwriter software, which might already exist, but that might help too in future. But anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. All the videos and articles that I have mentioned can be found in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and comment with all your thoughts on this lawsuit. Keep me aware of any developments, any other news. I want to stay up to date on this. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks as ever to my amazing Patreon supporters. But otherwise, I will see you next week.